My name is Robert. I'm 84 years old, and there's a conversation I had 37 years ago that I think about almost every day. Not because it was loud or dramatic or even particularly long, but because I didn't understand it. Not then, and by the time I did, it was too late to go back. I'm recording this because I don't know how much time I have left to say it out loud, and because I've carried it long enough that it feels like it's become part of me, like a stone I swallowed years ago that never quite dissolved. I don't know if this'll help anyone. I'm not even sure it'll help me, but I need to say it anyway. It was November of 1987. I remember because the leaves were already gone from the trees, and the sky had that flat gray look it gets right before winter settles in for good. I was 51 then, still working, still busy, still convinced I had all the time in the world. My daughter, Sarah, had come to visit. She lived about 2 hours away at the time, had her own life, her own job. She didn't come by often, but when she did, it was always pleasant. We'd have dinner, talk about surface things, she'd leave, and I'd go back to whatever I was doing. That day, she showed up unannounced. I was in the garage, working on something I don't even remember now. She stood in the doorway for a moment, hands in her coat pockets, and said, "Dad, do you have a minute?" I didn't look up right away. I said, "Sure, what's up?" And she said, I need to talk to you about something." I wiped my hands on a rag and turned around. She looked tired, not physically tired, but tired in a way I didn't have a word for back then. She said, "Can we sit down?" We went inside, sat at the kitchen table. I remember the light coming through the window, the way it made everything look a little washed out. She didn't say anything at first, just sat there, turning her coffee mug in her hands. And then she said, "I don't think you really know me." I laughed, not because I thought it was funny, but because I didn't know what else to do. I said, "What are you talking about? Of course I know you. You're my daughter." She looked at me for a long time, and then she said, "Yeah, I am." She didn't say it with anger, just resignation, like she'd already decided this conversation wasn't going to go anywhere. I asked her what she meant. She said, "Never mind, it's fine." I said, "No, really, what do you mean?" She shook her head. "I don't want to make this into a thing." I told her she wasn't making it into anything, that I just wanted to understand. She looked down at her mug, and then she said, "I don't think you've ever asked me what I actually want, or what I think about, or what I'm afraid of." I opened my mouth to respond, but she kept going. "I think you love me, I do, but I don't think you've ever really been curious about who I am. You know the version of me you need me to be, but that's not the same thing." I sat there. I didn't know what to say, because part of me wanted to argue with her, to tell her she was wrong, that of course I knew her, that I'd raised her, hadn't I? That I'd been there. But another part of me, a quieter part, knew exactly what she meant, and I didn't want to look at it. So I said, "I think you're being a little unfair." She nodded. "Maybe." And then she stood up. She said I should go. I asked if she wanted to stay for dinner. She said no, that she had to get back. I walked her to the door. She hugged me, and then she left. I went back to the garage, told myself she was just going through something, that she'd be fine, that it wasn't as serious as she made it sound. I didn't call her that week, or the next. I figured she needed space, and honestly, I didn't want to have that conversation again, because it made me uncomfortable. It made me feel like I'd done something wrong, and I didn't know how to fix it. So I waited for her to reach out. She didn't. A few months went by. I called her once or twice, left messages. She called back eventually. We talked about nothing, work, weather, safe things, and I told myself that meant everything was fine, that whatever she'd been upset about had passed. But the truth is, I knew it hadn't. I could hear it in her voice, the way she kept the conversation short, the way she didn't volunteer anything about her life unless I asked. And even when I asked, her answers were careful, polite, like she was talking to someone she didn't entirely trust. I told myself I'd bring it up next time I saw her, but I never did, because I didn't know how, and because part of me was afraid of what she might say if I asked her to explain it again. Years passed. She got married. I was there. She had kids. I visited. We stayed in touch, but there was always something between us, something I couldn't name. It wasn't hostility. It wasn't even coldness. It was just distance, like we were speaking two different languages, and neither of us knew how to translate. I'd watch her with her children sometimes, the way she'd get down on the floor with 'em, ask 'em questions, really listen, and I'd think, she's a good mother. But I didn't think much beyond that. When she was 46, she got sick. Cancer. They caught it late. She went through treatment, surgery, all of it. I visited her in the hospital, sat beside her bed, held her hand, but I didn't ask her how she felt. Not really. I asked if she was in pain, if she needed anything, but I didn't ask what it was like to be that scared, to not know if you'd see your kids grow up. I didn't ask because I thought it would upset her, but the truth is, I didn't ask because I didn't know how. She died 3 months later. I was there. Her husband was there. Her kids. She was unconscious by then. I held her hand and told her I loved her, and I meant it, but I don't know if she heard me. After the funeral, I went home, and I sat in the same kitchen where we'd had that conversation all those years ago, and I finally let myself think about what she'd said. I don't think you've ever asked me what I actually want, or what I think about, or what I'm afraid of. And I realized she was right. I'd spent 51 years being her father, but I'd never really tried to know her, not as a person, not as someone separate from me. I loved the idea of her, the daughter I'd raised, but I'd never been curious about who she actually was, what she dreamed about when she was alone, what hurt her, what made her feel alive. I assumed that because I was there, because I provided, because I showed up, that was enough. But it wasn't, and she'd tried to tell me. She'd given me a chance, and I let it go, because I was uncomfortable, because I didn't want to feel like I had failed. I've thought about that conversation every day since she died. I've replayed it in my mind so many times I can see the exact way the light hit the table, the way her hands looked around that mug, the way her voice sounded when she said, "Never mind, it's fine." She let me off the hook, and I took it. I've tried to forgive myself for that. Some days I can. Most days I can't. I have her journals now. Her husband gave 'em to me a few years after she passed. He said I thought I should have 'em. I didn't read 'em right away. I kept 'em in a drawer for almost 2 years. I think I was afraid of what I'd find. But eventually I opened 'em, and I read. She wrote about me, not a lot, but enough. She wrote about feeling invisible, about wanting me to see her, about wondering if I ever thought about who she was when I wasn't around. She wrote about that conversation, the one in the kitchen. She said she'd been planning it weeks, that she'd practiced what she wanted to say, that she'd hoped it would be a turning point. And then she wrote, "I don't think he understood, or maybe he did, and he just didn't know what to do with it. Either way, I don't think I'll bring it up again. I don't want to make him feel bad. She protected me, even then, even when she was asking for something so simple. She protected me from my own discomfort, and I let her. I'm 84 years old now, and I think about her every single day. I think about all the questions I never asked, all the moments I could have leaned in and didn't, all the times I chose comfort over connection. I don't know if she forgave me. I hope she did, but I'll never know, because I didn't ask. I'm not telling you this because I think it'll change anything. I'm telling you because I wish someone had told me, not in a loud way, not in a way that made me defensive, but in a way that made me stop and think and realize that the people we love are not fixed. They're not